Meet Nigel McFadgen. He runs 70 breeders on 450 acres near Delamere in South Australia, and he's been looking at ways of increasing the productivity and the safety of his operation. Let's find out about his new yards and how these have led to an upgrade in weighing equipment and a new paddock design. Nigel, how are you, mate?
I'm very well, Tim, thank you.
Thank you very much for having us out here today. Now you're doing some very interesting things with your cattle operation. You took over this place from your father-in-law, I believe?
That's right. We about 7 or 8 years ago, but prior to that we were involved helping to run it for about 15 years before then.
And there was some well-designed infrastructure that was already in place, but you've looked at ways of making this property more efficient and safer for people that are working on it.
That's right. The old yards we had must have been built probably 30 years plus. And well before you could get any of these modular systems. And it required an awful lot of people to run a mob of say 40 animals through. Sharp edges, it wasn't even, there was no forcing yards or anything like that. When we had the opportunity of putting these up, it was very much, what were the parts that worked well, what didn't, who could we call upon, and what technology could we use. But the other key thing really was that I run this property these days full-time by myself, so I can't do everything. So I have to call in the assistance of 3 daughters, my wife, a whole lot of friends about the same age as myself, a lot of whom don't spend that much time on the property. So when you're moving cattle around that can be up to 600 kilos in weight, you really got to think about how you do it safely. As well, and that's when you're putting a lot of them through, or if you're doing a smaller amount, if you're doing it yourself, how can you use the systems around now so that if you have to put even 30 animals through just to weigh them, how you can do it. So that drove us really then to look at what were the options.
Can you tell me a few of the reasons why you've gone with this particular brand and this particular design?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm a bit different to other people, but I like to go down to first principles and look at the design and the layouts and things like that. I mean, brochures are great, but there's a whole lot of information that is not necessarily there. And so I got hold of the guys at Hastings a number of times, and we went through really what were the options for the size of mobs I was running. So I was running 2 mobs of about 35 each, roughly. So I looked at all the layouts and then had to look at those layouts and say, how did it actually fit on the area that I wanted to put them in? This property is unique in that there's not a single flat paddock here. So I've got to work around the best solution, which invariably is something that requires an excavator to come in and remove a substantial amount of soil to get whatever I want in. So we had to look at accessibility for truck and trailers, how could we link it in with paddocks, etc. So the drawings I got were really good. There was people there I could talk to. For example, I mean, I've never used forcing yards before and I've introduced them here. So I needed to understand the do's and don'ts of these things. And around this part of the world, there's more new yards going in, but they're all very different. So you've got to try and speak to where best practice is, not just in terms of yardage and things like that, but in cattle management generally. And that made the whole process a lot easier.
What have been the major learnings that you've had taking away from this? What would you do differently if you're going to install these yards again?
I think the solution I've got has worked out pretty well, but there are things differently. I mean, when I put these in, it was a huge learning thing. I mean, you can look at me, I come from an environment of looking at engineering drawings, so I can read them, but when you actually excavate and you put them in, you've got to make sure that there's enough leeway that you can integrate it within the existing paddocks you want to use. And that was something I knew not a lot about.
And you've changed the paddock design as a result of putting these yards in? What have you changed?
The problem I had with the other yards is that if I had to hold animals for a period of time between taking them through to do various things, or I had to hold them before they go into the market, I invariably had to put them back into a big paddock. So I've taken one big paddock and broken it down to 3, and I have gates through them now where I can move them all the way through, can do it by myself. Around the yards I've got 2 holding yards, one top and bottom, which I also use for drafting them through as well. And the other thing that I had to bear in mind is that once I put these up, I really didn't know how I was going to work them. So I had to have the flexibility of, if something wasn't right, how can I change it?
And so for that flexibility, you actually ordered a few extra panels, and they're movable panels. It's not a permanent yard system.
That's right.
So you've changed the yards around a few times to get to a feel for what you want.
I actually, Tim ordered the panels for a different purpose, as it turned out. But yeah, I got.
But we won't mention that.
No, they're all basically the same size. They're Norton panels. So once I got it up and running and we started using, realised certain bits needed to be bigger and different. Gates weren't in the same place, weren't required in the same place as the drawing. So we played around with them a lot, and that
so
took
by using standard panels, that gave you some more flexibility as well, didn't it?
All we did was we concreted in the raceways from the forcing yard through to the other side of the crush. Because we weren't going to change that, and also connecting that into the ramp. But all the other bits where we bring the cattle in, we draft them out, etc. We changed the gates, and we still do it every now and then based upon the animals we got through. And one person can lift a panel up, unpin it, and move it around easily. So that flexibility has been good, and hopefully when prices increase again, I'll buy more breeders. So I might have to increase the size of yards, and all I'll do then is to get some more panels, increase the size of them.
Now you've also gone towards wireless weighing gear that integrates with your phone. When you took over the place about 7 or 8 years ago, we were still running with the little infamous red book.
Yeah, that's right.
And you've gone to a completely digital platform. And that's proving to be a winner for you? Yeah,
I mean, what I inherited, I suppose, was a paper-driven system where nothing actually reconciled.
Yes.
And that's no reflection on my father-in-law. It's just, in many respects, the idiosyncrasies of writing things down in bits of paper you lose. I've come from a manufacturing environment that things were electronically managed through the process flow, and I saw no reason why we wouldn't do that here. And there was a number of things I found odd, is that being a cattle breeder, to me it was key. The first thing you've got to do is have a set of scales.
Yes.
Otherwise you don't know, how your breeding cycle's going, your feeding, and when you should sell the things.
And you're using scales that you can move around the property, the old sets of yards to the new sets of yards, and it still integrates into your phone just to see.
Totally. I started off with just generic ones, and they were good to get me going. And then I soon found out having all these cables floating around was invariably replacing plugs. There was people tripping over them, and you read about it, but when you've got 4 people working a set of yards and running around, it's very easy. So I got rid of them. About the same time prior to that, actually, I bought an HR5. So every single animal that I breed, when it comes to tagging and banding and vaccinating for the first time, I put the tags on and we electronically log them into the system and create them. And every single activity that occurs in this property, whether it's major or minor, we scan them and we get that history. And there's people who think, God, this takes a lot of time, but it doesn't. Once you've got the process up and running and the flow of what you need to do, it's straightforward.
So Nigel, I suppose the big message here is, if people are managing a property, particularly if they're managing it on their own, start with the yards, move out from them, and embrace technology, because it's going to make your job safer, easier, and more profitable.
Yeah. Put a bit of weight on, girl. Oh, absolutely brilliant. Come on, up we go. Come on. Come on. Come on. 230. Have a look. Scan, pink 43. That could not be easier. Yeah, seriously. What was happening in the past is that we used to always write them down as well, because you couldn't see it all in one space. It's all on the phone now. One. Yeah, I know you don't like it. Come on. Well, out you go. Come on. Same weight as the other one. 230. Run. Yeah, pink 68. Terrific. It seriously does make your life so much easier.
Nigel, how are you?
I'm very well, Tim, thank you.
That's good.